Chapter 12:27. The lightning ball and the meteor sword light clashed. In the next moment, a faint crack appeared. This was a spatial crack. Normally, only a battle between peak emperors could tear the space apart. Yichen was still some distance away from peak emperors. However, the Doomsday Meteor Sword and Primal Chaos Lightning Ball had a special nature, so it wasn't hard to understand why they would create spatial cracks. The appearance of the spatial crack caused the entire space to shake. The yuan qi of the heaven and earth turned chaotic, showing signs of going berserk. Found it. Emperor Shui Kong formed hand seals, searching for the weak point of the minor 5-elemental thunder light array. It had to be said that the minor 5-elemental thunder light array was practically flawless. Even if it had a weak point, it was not something that a titled monarch like Emperor Shui Kong, who had yet to become an emperor, could detect. Even if Emperor Shui Kong had done some research on arrays, the appearance of the spatial crack, no, to be exact, it was Yi Chen's attack on the Great Array that had caused the Great Array's operation to pause for a moment. It was precisely this slight pause that Emperor Shui Kong caught. He hurriedly took out a small array flag from his storage ring, and with a flick of his hand, inserted it into the weak point of the Great Array. This array flag was no ordinary item, but a formation-breaking flag. Its value was no less than a low-grade Emperor-grade weapon. With the existence of the array flag, the minor 5-elemental thunder light array's operation would have to pass through the array flag. In other words, the array flag had already fused with the minor 5-elemental thunder light array, becoming a part of it. It could be described as a tumor. Finding the weak point would make breaking the formation much easier. Of course, if they relied on Yi Chen to forcefully break the formation, their attacking power wouldn't be enough. Not good. Demon Array Emperor's face turned ashen. Originally, he had the confidence to exhaust Yi Chen's group of 5 to death by relying on the formation. However, with the Snow Air Emperor's existence, this plan was ruined. Let's go! Without any hesitation, Demon Array Emperor took the lead and left the Great Formation, rapidly flying away from the island. He still had self-awareness and knew that he wasn't Yi Chen's opponent. Once the latter broke out of the formation, the 5 of them wouldn't be able to stop him. With a huge bang, the formation collapsed. As for the 5, they had long since left the place. They're lucky they ran fast. The Scarlet Wind Emperor was extremely depressed. They had been trapped in the formation for no reason at all. If not for Yi Chen, they would have died without even their ashes remaining. His heart was extremely sullen. Taking out an elementary inner core, Yi Chen replenished his lost sword energy. He glanced at the direction that the Demon Formation Emperor and the others fled to. If he was alone, he wouldn't mind chasing after them. However, this was the Heavenly River. It was inconvenient to communicate with each other, and it would be easy to get separated. The Heavenly River had no year, moon, or day, but it had endless flowing water. The river flowed at an extremely fast speed, and it possessed the property of spatial fluctuations. Often, it would travel hundreds or even thousands of light years without anyone noticing. Of course, spatial fluctuations didn't happen all the time. There was a pattern to it. The time of the tide was the peak of spatial fluctuations, and it was very difficult to encounter it during normal times. On this day, as the tide rose, the scenery around the Scarlet Wind immediately became blurry. The next moment, the world spun and the Scarlet Wind arrived at an archipelago. An archipelago? The Flamingo Emperor cried out in alarm. In the Celestial River domain, encountering an island was already a fortunate thing, but encountering an archipelago was a sign of great luck. It was possible that one would never encounter an archipelago in their entire lives. It is indeed an archipelago. The Stone Man Emperor revealed a smile and let out a sigh of relief. In the blink of an eye, they had drifted on the Heavenly River for almost 2 years. If they still couldn't find the Imperial Spirit route, he had the thought of returning home. After all, he couldn't let Yi Chen and the others keep drifting on the Heavenly River with him. Maybe we can find the Imperial Spirit route this time. The Scarlet Wind Emperor and the Snow Air Emperor smiled. Although it was called an archipelago, the number of islands was actually limited. There were 8 in total. The 2 larger islands were the closest to each other, while the other 6 guarded the 2 larger islands. Among the 8 islands, 7 of them were lush and full of life. The last island was a volcanic island, and the smell of sulfur spread far and wide. However, what disappointed the 5 was that this archipelago seemed to have been visited before. There weren't many precious primordial spirit herbs, and even if there were some, their age was very young. It seemed that they had only grown in the last 1,000 years and weren't very useful. Let's go to the volcanic island and have a look. Soon, the 5 of them had searched the 7 lush islands and decided to search the last one, the volcanic island. The 5 didn't know the growing environment of the imperial spirit root. Perhaps, the volcanic island still had a glimmer of hope. Arriving at the volcanic island, the Snow Air Emperor couldn't help but cough a few times. The smell of sulfur here was too dense and different from ordinary sulfur. The sulfur on the volcanic island carried an intense fire poison that could instantly kill any king under the 6th layer of life and death realm. Although it couldn't kill the 5, it wouldn't feel good either. Only the Fire Sparrow Emperor wasn't affected. She was a fire attribute demonic beast, the descendant of the phoenix. She naturally liked places with fire. After searching for a while, the 5 still didn't find anything. Eventually, their gazes landed on the active volcano at the center of the island. "We can only enter the volcano," the Snow Air Emperor said. "I'll lead the way." The Fire Sparrow Emperor soared into the sky and turned into a line of fire, shooting toward the active volcano. Yi Chen and the others followed behind her. The active volcano was huge, tens of thousands of meters tall, and immeasurably deep. The fiery mouth at the top was like a fiery abyss, making one's heart tremble with fear. Waves of heat rose up, bringing up thousands of meters of pale red chi flow. Yi Chen gave it a try. Merely the pale red chi flow could melt a heavenly king-grade artifact. Yi Chen wondered if the emperor-grade artifact would also be melted if he went deeper. This place naturally contained extreme fire profound, poison profound, yang profound, and earth profound. Along with the pale red chi flow, a red figure suddenly shot out and attacked the Fire Sparrow Emperor. Courting death. The Fire Sparrow Emperor spat out a fire dragon, using fire to fight fire. The phoenix flames were the strongest flames in the world. The red figure was clearly a fire monster, but it was unable to block the phoenix flames. It cried out miserably as it was burned. The 5 of them looked carefully and saw that it was a fire monster that looked like a crow. Puchi. The flame extinguished, and the fire monster was burned to ashes, leaving behind a red crystal. Holding it in his hand, the Fire Sparrow Emperor said, "This is also a beast Dan." The beast Dan of a fire monster wasn't very big. It couldn't compare to the beast Dan of a low-level water monster, and its effect was much weaker. But different from the water monster Dan, the fire monster Dan had an element, so it wasn't suitable for people who didn't cultivate fire element arts. With the Fire Sparrow Emperor leading the way, the 5 went deeper and deeper. Along the way, more and more fire monsters appeared. At first, there were fire monsters that looked like crows, and they had the strength of 3-star generals. Later, 3-headed firebirds appeared. 3-legged firebirds had the strength of 5-star generals. Continuing down, human-faced bird monsters suddenly appeared. These human-faced bird monsters were no weaker than low-tier water monsters, and they had the strength of low-tier emperors. Although the Fire Sparrow Emperor was a descendant of the phoenix and could naturally suppress fire element beasts, the difference was still the difference. Therefore, the Scarlet Wind Emperor and Yi Chen had to take the lead. Chapter 12:28. The volcano was 30,000 meters high, and Yi Chen's group gradually went deeper. Due to the powerful updraft, their speed was not fast. After half a cup of tea's time, they had only reached 6,000 meters from the bottom. The color has changed. The updraft turned from light red to dark red. 3,000 meters from the bottom, the color changed again, turning scarlet. At 3,000 meters, the scarlet color turned black. When they reached the bottom of the volcano, the color of the airflow had turned black, and the origin of the airflow was the black magma at the bottom of the volcano. Although it was called magma, the strange thing was that the temperature around the magma was very low. The ground was covered in black ice, and when one stepped on it, The bone-chilling cold immediately drilled in like little snakes. Strange, there is actually bone-chilling magma, so why is the updraft hot? Snow Air Emperor could not figure it out. She cultivated an ice attribute art, and although she still felt a little uncomfortable, it was not a big deal. Stone Emperor bent down and touched the black ice. Gotcha. It seemed that he did not use Jin Yuan to protect himself, and his palm immediately turned into a black ice sculpture. When Stone Emperor circulated his Zhen Yuan to expel it, his palm instantly shattered. This black ice was extremely tyrannical, and once frozen, it would be impossible to expel the cold qi. Stone Emperor circulated his undying body, and his palm recovered. He sighed and said, "If I guessed correctly, this is the legendary 9 nether cold ice, which can freeze everything in the world. Moreover, it is divided into 9 grades. If it was high-grade 9 nether cold ice, we would have been frozen and shattered the moment we landed." 9 nether cold ice? It was Yi Chen's first time hearing about such a strange thing, and from Stone Emperor's tone, it seemed to be very frightening. Stone Emperor explained, "I'm afraid you all do not know this, but in the ancient era, this Sky River was not only called Sky River, but also 9 nether yellow spring, which connects to Hell. Legend has it that Hell has ice and fire. The ice is the 9 nether cold ice, and the fire is the hellfire. Being sealed by the 9 nether cold ice, even the soul would be frozen and turned into powder. This is not possible, right? Is there really a hell?" The Scarlet Wind Emperor had a look of disbelief. The Fire Sparrow Emperor looked at the Scarlet Wind Emperor with disdain and said, "Although I haven't seen any information about hell, my Phoenix clan has heard of hell since ancient times. It is said that one of my Phoenix clan's primogenitors entered hell, but there was no news of them afterwards. However, another primogenitor said that the primogenitor who entered hell had already fallen. Hell was a synonym for mystery and terror in every race. It was just that no one had ever entered hell before. Perhaps some people had entered hell before, just like the ancestors of the Phoenix race, but none of them had ever come out. Naturally, there was a lack of evidence. Then why is there 9 hells frozen ice here? 9 hells frozen ice should only appear in hell." Snow Air Emperor asked. Yi Chen guessed, "Perhaps this is an entrance to hell." Entrance? Hearing Yi Chen's words, the Scarlet Wind Emperor and the others couldn't help but take a step back. They didn't want to enter hell. Not to mention anything else, just the black lava alone was unbearable. Stone Emperor said, "There are many entrances to hell. Every living world has a blood-weeping ghost region. It's said that it's a small projection of hell, and those with great abilities can find the entrance. As for the depths of Heavenly River, there is a barrier that can only be seen after reaching a certain depth. If you want to enter, it'll be much more difficult. You'll have to break the barrier in order to enter, and that's Yellow Spring. Yellow Spring and Heavenly River are 2 sides of the same coin." Yi Chen faintly nodded. Elysium indeed had a blood-weeping ghost region, and Yi Chen had entered it once. However, it was very desolate, and there wasn't anything that Yi Chen needed. Therefore, Yi Chen hadn't entered again. For some reason, Yi Chen thought of the blood-severing ghost finger he had obtained in Dragon God's celestial palace. This thing was very strange. Once cultivated to greater completion, a ghostly shadow would appear behind one's back. Moreover, this ghostly shadow didn't seem to be illusory, and seemed to have its own thoughts. Yi Chen had once seen this ghostly shadow reveal an eerie smile. A long time ago, Yi Chen had stopped using the blood-severing ghost finger. Apart from discovering the flaws of the technique, the ghostly shadow was also too strange. Although the 5 had determined this was the entrance to hell, they didn't intend to return empty-handed. They began to search the surroundings for treasures. This seems to be the 9 hells frozen ice pearl. Soon, the Snow Air Emperor found the first treasure. Yi Chen looked over and saw that the Snow Air Emperor was holding a dark green pearl in his hand. The cold qi inside the pearl was restrained, but the aura emitted from it still caused ice to form on the Snow Air Emperor's palm. Fortunately, the Snow Air Emperor had already circulated his Zhen Yuan, and the cold qi was isolated outside of his Zhen Yuan. Therefore, his hand wasn't injured. 9 hells frozen ice pearl was a treasure on the same level as the darkness god crystal. After pouring Zhenyuan into it and throwing it out, it could create a cold chi whirlpool. Under Emperor Realm, almost no one could escape from it. Soon, Yichen also found a 9 Hells Frozen Ice Pearl. 9 Hells Frozen Ice Pearl was the essence of 9 Hells Frozen Ice. Yichen didn't dare to be careless, so he circulated his sword yuan and picked it up. This thing was useless to him, but he could give it to the people around him. The more the better. The volcanic area was tens of thousands of meters wide. 9 Hells Frozen Ice Pearls were usually hidden in the 9 Hells Frozen Ice. It was hard to scan with soul power, so one could only search with their eyes. After half a day, Yichen had collected a total of 10 9 Hells Frozen Ice Pearls. No more. Let's leave. After searching for a while, the Stone Emperor suggested. All right. Everyone nodded. This place was too cold. Even with the protection of Zhenyuan, it wouldn't feel good after a long time. Just as they were about to leave, Yichen suddenly saw a black human figure in the black lava. This black human figure climbed out of the black lava and stuck close to the ground, silently shooting towards the Snow Air Emperor who was the closest to it. Watch out! Yichen instantly pulled out his flying sword and threw out a beam of sword chi. Swoosh! The black shadow was split into two. However, not only did the two halves of the shadow not die, they even dashed towards Emperor Shui Kong at an even faster speed. Emperor Shui Kong's figure suddenly stopped, and soon after, his eyes began to turn black, and the whites of his eyes disappeared. In Yi Chen's previous life, he had always heard people talk about being possessed by ghosts. Now, it was his first time seeing it for himself. Shui Air, are you okay? The Scarlet Wind Emperor hurried to the Snow Air Emperor's side and grabbed her shoulders. The Snow Air Emperor smiled weirdly. His eyes turned into two black whirlpools as he stared at the Scarlet Wind Emperor. The Scarlet Wind Emperor only felt a wave of coldness pouring down from the top of his head. In the next second, his expression became sluggish. Don't get close to them. Let me do it. Yichen warned the Stone Emperor and the Fire Sparrow Emperor as he carefully walked over. As he approached, the Snow Air Emperor suddenly turned his head and stared at Yichen with his black eyes. Destroy! Yichen roared as his destruction sword intent burst out of his body. A cold wind spread out, and the surrounding temperature dropped even more. Chapter 12:29. The Immortal Sword Intent was invulnerable to all evils, while the Destruction Sword Intent was even more tyrannical, able to destroy any form of existence. According to Yi Chen's understanding, ghosts were a special kind of soul, and the Destruction Sword Intent could definitely harm or even destroy them. Behind the Snow Air Emperor, half of a black shadow's body was blown out, with green smoke rising from its body. However, this shadow was very tenacious. After the Destruction Sword Intent dispersed, it once again entered the Snow Air Emperor's body. Unfortunately, Yichen would not give it the chance to control the Snow Air Emperor's body again. Yichen's right hand reached out like lightning, pressing on the Snow Air Emperor's shoulder. In the next second, the Immortal Sword Intent, which was different from the Destruction Sword Intent, poured into the Snow Air Emperor's body. He did not dare to use the Destruction Sword Intent, because while it would kill the shadow, it would also cause unimaginable damage to the Snow Air Emperor. The shadow tasted pain this time. Although the Immortal Sword Intent was not as tyrannical as the Destruction Sword Intent, it still had the effect of suppressing ghosts. In the blink of an eye, the Immortal Sword Intent filled the Snow Air Emperor's body, forcing the shadow out. The holy white light ignited the shadow's body. Die! His left hand turned into a claw, and Yichen reached into the shadow's body, bursting out the Destruction Sword Intent. Buzz! The sharp black ripple spread out, and the shadow suddenly became blurry, almost disappearing. As the shadow tried to escape, Yichen's right hand followed, also reaching into the shadow's body. Under the attack of the two Destruction Sword Intents, the shadow let out a silent howl before disappearing completely. What happened? The Snow Air Emperor and the Scarlet Wind Emperor woke up at the same time. The Scarlet Wind Emperor was only confused for a second, not as badly as the Snow Air Emperor. The Stone Man Emperor let out a breath of relief. Just now, hearing the Stone Man Emperor's explanation, the Snow Air Emperor and the Stone Man Emperor both had cold sweat. They did not think that they would encounter such a strange thing here. Now, the Scarlet Wind Emperor was starting to believe that there were ghosts and hell in this world. I can't stay here for long. I should leave first. Yi Chen had a new understanding of ghosts. In the world he was in, there was no proof of the existence of ghosts. But even if ghosts did exist, they would not be this powerful. One had to know that the Snow Air Emperor and the Scarlet Wind Emperor were not ordinary people. Their bodies contained a powerful aura, and these kinds of evil ghosts could not even get close to them. However, this black shadow was able to invade the Snow Air Emperor's body in an instant and control his mind. Then, it confused the Scarlet Wind Emperor the moment their eyes met. If not for Yi Chen having the Destruction Sword intent and the Immortal Sword intent, he might not have been able to save the two of them. Following the flow of air, the five of them flew toward the crater. Along the way, Yi Chen vaguely felt that his body had passed through something. A seal? Yi Chen speculated. Only a seal could explain why there was a bone-chilling cold below and a scorching heat above. Only a seal could explain why there were no ghosts in the outside world, but only this place. Of course, all of this was still uncertain. The heavenly river was boundless, and there might be ghosts that left this place and wandered around. Not long after Yi Chen and the others left, a black shadow suddenly emerged from the black magma. This black shadow slowly floated above the black magma, and a black substance slid off its body. Not long after, a lifeless face was revealed. Its eyes had no pupils and were deathly pale, which was horrifying. The Scarlet Wind ship rode the wind and waves, shuttling above the heavenly river. Unknowingly, Yi Chen and the others arrived at the intersection of a 5th-grade tributary and a 4th-grade tributary. At the center of the intersection, the waves were towering. If one were to get closer, they would discover that there was a huge whirlpool there. This whirlpool was unimaginably huge, and there were layers upon layers of it. It was even bigger than a galaxy. Anyone below the Supreme Being level would face life-threatening danger if they tried to pass through here. There's an island there. What surprised the five of them was that there was actually a small island at the edge of the intersection point. This island was not very far from the whirlpool, but it was not very close either. The island was surrounded by reefs, and it was very tall. The monstrous waves could only hit the sides of the island, and were unable to completely submerge this isolated island. The edge of the intersection is still relatively safe. Let's go and take a look. The Stone Emperor suggested. Yi Chen and the others had no objections. They had finally found an island, but they would definitely regret it if they went and took a look. The island seemed very close, but time and space were unpredictable above the heavenly river. Sometimes, it seemed close, but it was actually very far. Sometimes, it seemed very far, but it could be reached with a single step. After a full day and night, the Scarlet Wind ship finally reached the shore. What a terrifying Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi. When they arrived at the island, the five were shocked by the Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi. The density of the Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi here was beyond imagination. There were layers of clouds in the sky, which were condensed from the Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi. The rain of Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi nourished the flowers and trees on the island. As far as the eye could see, there were spirit grasses everywhere. Even the most common weeds were superior grade. Of course, the five of them had high standards. They wouldn't be interested in ordinary spirit grasses. Only monarch spirit grasses and above could enter their eyes. Extreme Yang Wood. Profound Yin Grass. 7-colored divine fruit. 5 elements flower. Leaving aside the monarch spirit grasses, there were many monarch spirit grasses on the island. After a short while, Yi Chen found 4 stalks of monarch spirit grasses. Extreme Yang Wood and Profound Yin Grass were mid-grade monarch spirit grasses. With the two of them, one's yin-yang qi would be more harmonious, which was quite useful in improving the spirit body. Yi Chen's current spirit body was at the early stage of the 7th rank. With the Extreme Yang Wood and Profound Yin Grass, along with some other materials, he had a certain degree of confidence in breaking through to the mid-stage of the 7th rank. One had to know that the higher one's spirit body was, the harder it was to improve. Except for body refinement monarchs, after reaching the 7th rank, every step forward would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens, requiring the assistance of extremely precious treasures. However, treasures weren't cabbages that could be easily obtained. Moreover, he had used the extreme young wood and profound een grass this time. The next time he used these two, it wouldn't have any effect, and he would have to use more precious treasures. As for the 7-colored divine fruit and the 5 elements flower, one was a high-grade monarch spirit grass, while the other was a supreme-grade monarch spirit grass. The 7-colored divine fruit was a rare treasure that could strengthen one's yuan spirit. As for how much it could strengthen, it depended on the age of the 7-colored divine fruit. This 7-colored divine fruit grew on the ground, and it was at least 100,000 years old. It could make Yi Chen's yuan spirit more condensed, and once the yuan spirit grew stronger, his talent in martial arts would also improve. The 5 elements flower contained the profound of the 5 elements. Observing the 5 elements flower might allow one to comprehend a supreme martial art that integrated the profound of the 5 elements, which was equivalent to ascending to the heavens in a single step. Unknowingly, the 5 of them arrived at the center of the island. At this moment, the 5 of them stopped. There was a glacier in the center of the island, which looked rather strange and out of place with the environment of the island. Yi Chen was about to activate his soul eye to see through the glacier. Cracks spread out on the glacier, and the cracks grew larger and larger, spreading in all directions. Eventually, the entire glacier shattered, and there was an icy white ball of light in the center. "Let's go." Yi Chen had a bad feeling. He could clearly see a figure sitting in the icy white ball of light. This figure's aura was restrained, but the pressure he emitted was much stronger than that of the golden spear marshal. He was at least a peak martial emperor, or even a quasi-venerable. It was best to run as far as possible when encountering such an expert on the heavenly river. Even if he was from the human race, he couldn't be careless. "Where are you going?" The icy white ball of light shrank and merged into the body of an old man with a cold expression. He reached out his right hand and made a grabbing motion. The time and space started to shrink, and Yi Chen and the other 4, who had flown far away, were like small fish swimming against the current. They were instantly caught in the old man's palm. It was as if his right hand was a world of its own, an ancient mountain, and the 5 of them couldn't move at all. This was not something a peak martial emperor could do. This was definitely a quasi-venerable. Chapter 12:30. This is a quasi-sovereign? Yi Chen's strength was at the peak among high-grade emperors, but compared to peak emperors, he was several times weaker. Compared to a quasi-sovereign, the gap was immeasurable. However, he didn't expect the gap to be this huge. The opponent could easily grab the 5 of them with a single hand. It was like the Buddha's 5-finger mountain. Sword domain and sword yuan erupted at the same time. Yi Chen shouted and tried to break free from the opponent's grasp. The old man was slightly surprised. The power Yi Chen released was incomparably sharp. It was even stronger than high-grade emperors. "Hee, do you still want to run after falling into this old man's hands?" The palm exerted a bit of force, and Yi Chen's protective Zhen Yuan and sword domain collapsed. He spurted out a mouthful of blood. "Yi Chen, don't be rash. If he wanted to kill us, he could have killed us all just now. Don't anger him." Stone Emperor hastily transmitted his voice to Yi Chen. Yi Chen nodded slightly. Just as Stone Emperor had said, with the opponent's methods, they wouldn't be able to kill them even if they had 100 lives. Even peak emperors wouldn't be able to contend against a quasi-sovereign's methods. "You're smart. Indeed, I won't kill you. As long as you do me a favor, I can let you go." The old man's voice transmitted over. Stone Emperor's face paled. The opponent could actually hear his soul transmission. It was too frightening. "Senior, you're a quasi-sovereign. If even you can't do anything, I'm afraid we'll be even more helpless." Stone Emperor smiled bitterly. The old man shook his head and sneered, "There's nothing absolute in this world. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any accidents. This old man can't do it alone. With you guys, there's a bit more hope. Since that's the case, I'll accept it." The Stone Puppet Emperor knew that if they didn't agree, they would only suffer more. The other party might kill one of them out of anger, and the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. At this moment, they had no choice but to lower their heads. Even if the other party wanted them to die, they wouldn't be able to resist. At the same time, the stone puppet emperor blamed himself. Yi Chen and the others had come to the heavenly river mainly to find the sovereign path's spiritual route for him. If it wasn't for him, even if Yi Chen and the others wanted to come, they wouldn't have come now. At the very least, they would only be able to travel the heavenly river after a long period of time. With Yi Chen's talent, even if he couldn't defeat a quasi-venerable at that time, he would at least be able to protect himself. I don't know which race this old man is from, but he shouldn't be from the demons, yakshas, or evil spirits. It's also unlikely that he's from the Green Man tribe. He should be from another race. That technique just now contained the profound of the 5 elements, forming a world of its own. However, even I could see some flaws in it. It's probably just superficial. It can't be considered a real supreme martial art. Supreme martial arts contain several kinds of profound that reinforced and restrained each other, and the profound of the 5 elements was one of them. The old man's degree of integration of the 5 elements was not high. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have chosen to struggle because he had no way to do so. Of course, even if it was just a superficial supreme martial art, it was still thousands of times stronger than Yi Chen's doomsday meteor sword. Still sitting cross-legged on the ground, the old man stretched out his right hand and made a grabbing motion. With a pop, a dazzling 5-colored ball of light appeared before him. Very quickly, the old man threw Yi Chen's group of 5 into the 5-colored ball of light. Then, he closed his eyes as if he was healing. The 5-colored ball of light was only the size of a palm, but Yi Chen's group of 5 didn't think so. Yi Chen's soul force spread out and immediately discovered that the diameter of the 5-colored ball of light had reached an astonishing 5 million miles. Although it couldn't be considered a world or a plane and could only be considered a subspace, it was still very terrifying. What should we do now? The Scarlet Wind Emperor frowned. If he had known that there was a quasi-venerable of a foreign race on this island, he wouldn't have come even if he was beaten to death. Yi Chen said, "Since we're already here, let's just take things as they come. I believe we'll be safe for a while." The stone statue emperor said, "If I'm not wrong, this old man should be a quasi-venerable of the spirit race. His name is Old Ancestor Wuling. It is said that he has lived for almost 100,000 years and is reaching the end of his lifespan." The spirit race was a race born from the heavens. Although there weren't many members, each of them was extremely powerful. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that in terms of average battle strength, whether it was the demons or the Yaksha race, they were worlds apart. Of course, in terms of overall strength, the spirit race was far behind the demons or the human race. The spirit race had a total of 5 supremes, which wasn't too many or too few. They lived in a star field called the Spirit Zone, which was very far from the 4 major star fields and the Demon Zone. They were a neutral race. In the near future, the neutral races wouldn't necessarily continue to live in peace. However, for now, any neutral race would be the target of the demons and the human race. Even if they couldn't win them over, they wouldn't offend them, lest they join the enemy's alliance out of anger. Not good. This old man is reaching the end of his lifespan. He must have come to the heavenly river to find some heaven-defying treasure that can increase his lifespan. The environment of such a treasure is extremely dangerous. No wonder he got injured. The Fire Sparrow Emperor's brows creased. The lifespan of a life and death king was 100,000 years. Normally, this was the limit. However, the heavens would always leave a way out. Some heaven-defying treasures could indeed increase one's lifespan. For example, back in Elysium, Dragon King had lived for 1,000 years, creating a miracle. Hearing these words, the stone statue emperor's expression suddenly changed. "What's wrong?" Snow Air Emperor asked. The stone statue emperor sucked in a deep breath and said bitterly, "This is indeed bad. Do you know that Old Ancestor Wuling specializes in a secret art called the Sky-Seizing Puppet Secret Art?" Sky-Seizing Puppet Secret Art? Yi Chen looked at the stone statue emperor. The stone statue emperor explained, "The Sky-Seizing Puppet Secret Art is an ancient secret art. It's useless to the user himself, but it can turn others into puppets and give them 50% of the user's battle power. You're saying that he wants to turn us into puppets to open a path for him? Yi Chen's heart shook as he said. Most likely. The stone statue emperor's expression was bitter. Soon after, he raised his head and said to Yi Chen and the others, "It's all because of me that you guys ended up like this. In my next life, I, the stone statue emperor, am willing to do anything for you guys." Although the Scarlet Wind Emperor wasn't in a good mood, he still tried to persuade the Stone Being Emperor, "It's still unknown whether or not we will be refined into puppets. Let's not worry too much. Perhaps the situation will be much better than this." "I hope so." The Stone Statue Emperor nodded. Yi Chen's mood was also very heavy. However, he had experienced countless adversity and would never give up. This time was no exception. Getting rid of all distracting thoughts, Yi Chen tried to find a flaw in the five-colored space, hoping to find a way out. The premise was that old ancestor Wuling hadn't put away the five-colored light ball. Suddenly, Yi Chen's face flashed with joy. The space inside the five-colored light ball wasn't as stable as the outside world. It would occasionally emit clear spatial fluctuations. When his soul force scanned these spatial fluctuations, Yi Chen's space profundity seemed to be showing signs of a breakthrough. If I can comprehend the space profundity to perfection, I might have a chance to escape. With that thought, Yi Chen sat down and spread his soul force to comprehend the space profundity. Chapter 12:31. Time flew by, and no one knew how much time had passed. Inside the five-colored space, Yi Chen's space ultimacy was gradually increasing, and it had reached the critical point. Space ultimacy's great completion and space ultimacy's completion seemed to be a step away, but without the right opportunity, it was normal for one to not be able to comprehend it even after tens of thousands of years. After all, space ultimacy was not an ordinary ultimacy. It was an existence just below the power ultimacy and time ultimacy. Once it was completely comprehended, there would be a chance to comprehend time ultimacy. Originally, it was impossible for Yi Chen to have a chance to improve space ultimacy to completion in a short period of time. However, the world was strange. Wuling old ancestor catching them was a disaster, but putting them in the five-colored space was a blessing for Yi Chen. As for why it was a blessing, it was mainly because the five-colored space was composed of the five kinds of yuan qi and ultimacy: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. However, because Wuling old ancestor's five elements ultimacy wasn't integrated to a high degree, the spatial fluctuations were very obvious, giving Yi Chen a chance. Misfortune and blessing came hand in hand. Until the end, no one knew what the result would be. Space, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, the five elements reinforce and subdue each other. Yi Chen was completely immersed in comprehension. In the past, he had only comprehended space ultimacy and didn't think about anything else. But now, he found that comprehending space ultimacy wasn't that simple. If he could use the five elements ultimacy and space ultimacy to complement each other, he could comprehend space ultimacy even faster. This was because the five elements ultimacy contained everything, including time. Wisps and wisps. Yi Chen's soul sea became more and more transparent, and a kind of enlightenment came straight to his heart. In his heart, there seemed to be a huge door opening. Yi Chen's eyes suddenly opened, and a strange light spread out, as if he could see through space and time. Is this space ultimacy at completion? Yi Chen felt that he could teleport. Buzz. A faint spatial fluctuation spread out, and Yi Chen instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already at the edge of the multicolored space. The spatial barrier there was multicolored, like a thick layer of multicolored crystals. This five-colored space no longer has any secrets in my eyes. However, this spatial barrier is extremely profound. It contains many layers of space. Once I enter it, I'm afraid that I will need to spend a great amount of effort to escape. At that time, Ancestor Wuling will definitely stop me. Other than that, I will not be able to bring anyone away. Yi Chen frowned slightly. The five-colored space was connected to Patriarch Wuling's mind. Yi Chen didn't think that Patriarch Wuling wouldn't know that he had broken through the spatial barrier. Rather than taking the risk, he might as well wait for the right opportunity. Strolling leisurely, Yichen teleported to the center of the colorful space. At this time, the Scarlet Wind Emperor and the other three were cultivating in seclusion. Over the past few years, everyone had gathered quite a lot of good things, and some of them could be used now. The space ultimacy has reached completion. Now, it's time to improve my spirit body. Taking out the extreme yang wood and the profound yin grass, Yichen rubbed his hands together. The two items immediately turned into two streams of air that were absorbed into Yi Chen's body. These two streams of air were extremely pure yin-yang energy. Ordinary yin-yang energy naturally couldn't improve Yi Chen's spirit body, but the yin-yang energy contained in these two was incomparably strong and didn't have too many impurities. They were actually nourished by the yin-yang energy. The yin-yang energy formed a yin-yang diagram in Yi Chen's body, harmonizing the yin-yang and 5 elements in his body. At this time, using treasures to improve his spirit body would be twice the result with half the effort and wouldn't be a waste. Immediately after, Yichen took out a large number of treasures. There was the purple electric spirit liquid, form refining flower, and fairy lady grass. Of course, these were all supplementary materials and wouldn't have any effect on a rank 7 spirit body. The last item Yichen took out was a human-shaped fruit. This human-shaped fruit was called the human spirit fruit. It had the effect of nourishing a rank 7 spirit body. If there were 2 human spirit fruits, it could directly improve the spirit body from rank 7 initial stage to rank 7 middle stage. However, now that Yi Chen had the extreme yang wood and the profound yin grass, he shouldn't need 2 to succeed. Everything was ready, and he was only missing the right thing. Taking a deep breath, Yichen jumped into a jade bucket that was half the height of a person. The liquid inside was the purple electric spirit liquid, form refining flower, and fairy lady grass. Soaking inside, Yichen swallowed the human spirit fruit, closed his eyes, and put his palms together. In fact, Yichen had underestimated the effects of the extreme yang wood and profound yin grass. After consuming a small portion of the medicinal energy, Yi Chen's spirit body successfully broke through to the rank 7 mid-stage. The yin-yang diagram formed from the extreme yang wood and profound yin grass was like a transfer station that could increase the medicinal energy by 4 to 8 times. Originally, Yi Chen thought that 2 times would be the limit. Compared to the rank 7 mid-stage spirit body, the rank 7 mid-stage spirit body was several times stronger, and the inextinguishable energy within it was also several times stronger. Why don't I go all out and break through to the rank 7 mid-stage? Compared to the rank 7 mid-stage, the rank 7 late stage was several times stronger. Putting his thoughts into action, Yichen focused all his attention on the yin-yang diagram in his body. 3 days later, Yichen opened his eyes and a bright light burst out. Just a little bit more and I can reach the rank 7 late stage. I still have the yin-yang qi, but I don't have the materials to break through. At this time, the liquid inside the jade bucket had turned transparent, no different from water. All the energy inside was absorbed by Yichen. Yichen, I still have some here. Suddenly, 10 purplish-red crystals were thrown into the jade bucket. They were the Stone Emperor. He had stopped his seclusion a few days ago, and when he discovered that Yichen was breaking through, he stood by the side to protect him. These purplish-red crystals were called purple spirit crystals, and they were extremely rare. The Stone Emperor was originally preparing them for his own breakthrough, but he gave them to Yichen without any hesitation. After all, he still didn't know whether he would live or die this time, and he felt extremely guilty. Many thanks. Yichen nodded his head slightly. The moment the purple spirit crystals fell into the water, a drastic change occurred. Waves of purplish-red energy spread out, changing the color of the water completely, and a bubbling sound could be heard. Not daring to delay, Yichen absorbed the energy of the purple spirit crystals with all his might. With the addition of new energy, Yichen's stagnant spirit body continued to improve. The jade bucket shattered, and water splashed everywhere. With a blue flash, a set of blue clothes appeared on Yichen's body. A late-stage 7th rank spirit body was formed. A late-stage 7th rank spirit body, and the inextinguishable energy had begun to take shape. If the inextinguishable energy in the past was described as a very limited pool of water, then now it had transformed into a meandering stream. Not only did it increase in quantity, but its recovery speed was much faster than before as well. Congratulations. The Stone Emperor smiled. It's all thanks to your purple spirit crystals, Yichen said. The Stone Emperor shook his head. What I owe you isn't even enough for 100 purple spirit crystals. This time, Yichen interrupted him, you and I are friends. How can the friendship between friends be valued by external objects? Don't say such things again. All right. The Stone Emperor nodded vigorously. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Chen and the others even thought that Ancestor Wuling had completely forgotten about them. On this day, Ancestor Wuling woke up from his healing. Now that I've fully recovered, I will definitely obtain the abyssal fruit. Swish! With a flash of white light, Ancestor Wuling instantly left the island. Chapter 1232. Above the heavenly river, there was a vast expanse of whiteness. A multicolored ship quickly sailed over. A person was sitting cross-legged in the cabin of the ship. It was old Ancestor Wuling. This multicolored ship was his most precious treasure. It was an advanced Emperor-level warship. When a warship reached the Emperor level, its value would increase tenfold or even 100-fold with every minor grade. Even with his quasi-venerate strength and close to 100,000 years of accumulation, he only had one advanced Emperor-level warship. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't have the financial resources to buy it, but that he had nowhere to buy it. Otherwise, he was confident that he could even buy a top Emperor-level warship. He opened his right hand, and a spot of light slowly lit up in his palm. Soon, a multicolored ball of light flew out and floated in front of old Ancestor Wuling. I didn't have the time to control them while I was treating my injuries. Now it's time to use the Heaven-Seizing Puppet Secret Technique. The Heaven-Seizing Puppet Secret Technique was a mysterious ancient secret technique. It was a priceless treasure that old Ancestor Wuling had obtained from an ancient secret realm. The world only knew that the Heaven-Seizing Puppet Secret Technique could refine a puppet with 50% of the original strength, but they didn't know that 50% was not the limit. Generally speaking, ordinary martial emperors could only be refined into puppets with 50% of the original strength. As for titled monarchs, they could only be refined into yellow-grade puppets with 10 or 20% of the original strength. However, old Ancestor Wuling had seen records in the secret technique that some rare peerless geniuses could be refined into earth-grade puppets with 70% of the original strength. The strength of the puppet was related to the puppet's own cultivation, but it wasn't an absolute relationship. Geniuses who could challenge those of a higher cultivation level had a mysterious substance in their bodies. It was this substance that determined the strength of the puppet. The reason why old Ancestor Wuling had captured Yi Chen's group of 5 was that there was not only a low-level martial emperor among Yi Chen's group of 5, but there was also a peerless genius among them. This peerless genius was naturally Yi Chen. With the earth-grade puppet, ordinary quasi-venerates are no match for me. Even if I encounter a powerful quasi-venerate, I can easily escape. Old Ancestor Wuling was currently in a very good mood. The gloominess from losing a quasi-Earth-grade puppet decades ago had been swept away. Thinking of that quasi-Earth rank puppet, Wuling Patriarch could not help but think to himself, Emperor in green clothes, this old man will take revenge sooner or later. The materials for quasi-Earth step puppets were also rare geniuses that could only be chanced upon. After all, there were some truly powerful geniuses that Wuling Old Ancestor didn't dare to touch, nor could he touch. If he provoked the Supremes behind them, even if he had 100 lives, it wouldn't be enough. Hence, to Wuling Old Ancestor, quasi-Earth step puppets were extremely precious, and the more the better. As for Earth step puppets, he didn't even think about them. He didn't believe that a peerless genius with no background would appear in the starry skies of the universe. Yi Chen's appearance made him wild with joy. According to the information, there was absolutely no supreme being behind Yi Chen. This was practically a pie that fell from the sky. Let's start with the lad with the worst aptitude. Old Ancestor Wuling grabbed the Stone Man Emperor first. In his eyes, the Stone Man Emperor had the worst talent. The other 4 were younger and had great potential, especially Yi Chen. The moment the Stone Man Emperor was grabbed, he fell into a coma and was at old ancestor Wooling's mercy. Within the five-colored space, Yi Chen and the other three had ugly expressions. A five-colored palm had reached in and grabbed the Stone Man Emperor. They didn't even have time to react. Bastard! The Scarlet Wind Emperor was anxious. Let me see if I can break through the spatial barrier and escape. Yi Chen didn't plan to wait for death. Old ancestor Wooling capturing the Stone Man Emperor was definitely not a good thing. Then what about Old Shi? The Fire Sparrow Emperor asked hesitantly. Yi Chen was silent. Old ancestor Wooling was a quasi-venerable, and they couldn't save the Stone Man Emperor. It was unknown whether he could escape or not. The Scarlet Wind Emperor's eyes were red as he said, "If we stay, everyone will die. If we can escape, there will be a chance to take revenge for Old Shi in the future." His relationship with the Stone Man Emperor was indescribable, but things had to be prioritized. If he could save the Stone Man Emperor, the Scarlet Wind Emperor wouldn't hesitate. But if he stayed, he would still die. Lang Feng is right. The Snow Air Emperor was in a bad mood. She had never thought that such a thing would happen. Let's go. Taking a deep breath, Yi Chen flew toward the edge of the five-colored space. The Scarlet Wind Emperor and the other two followed behind. Arriving in front of the spatial barrier, Yi Chen opened the soul eye between his eyebrows. After his space profound reached perfection, Yi Chen's gaze had the spatial attribute. He could see through the void within his sensing range. With the help of the soul eye, this range would be expanded by 100 times. Within his line of sight, there was a three-dimensional square frame with countless dotted lines. These dotted lines were the trajectories of the spatial fluctuations. The trajectories of the spatial fluctuations in the outside world were more subtle, but the trajectories of the spatial fluctuations in the five-colored space were much more obvious. Of course, it would be very difficult to bring the three of them away, so he could only try. Open! After a long time, Yi Chen suddenly pulled out the Flying Heaven Sword and slashed at the void. A crack appeared in the void. Go in. Yi Chen's figure entered. This opening was where the trajectories of the spatial fluctuations overlapped. If one attacked from here, it would be easier to tear space apart and enter a mezzanine in the spatial barrier. As for the spatial barrier, it was like a 1,000-layer cake. There were many interlayers. One space mezzanine, 2, 3. In a short period of time, Yi Chen's group of 4 passed through 323 interlayers. If Wooling Forefather was healing, Yi Chen's actions would definitely be known by Wooling Forefather. This was because the five-colored space was hidden in Wooling Forefather's palm. Once there was a ripple, his mind would immediately sense it. Now, because Wooling Forefather was refining the Stone Puppet Emperor into a yellow rank puppet, his mind's perception was much weaker. Adding on the fact that the five-colored space was placed outside, his mind's perception was weakened again. 455th. 468th. Vaguely, Yi Chen could already see the outside world. Finally, Yi Chen's group of 4 arrived at the outermost interlayer. Turning around, Yi Chen said solemnly, "Next, we need to rush out in an instant and fly straight out of the battleship. At that time, I can only take care of myself. I hope you can understand." Scarlet Wind Emperor patted Yi Chen's shoulder. "It's good that one of us can escape. If you can escape, take revenge for me in the future. In turn, I will take revenge for you." Lang Feng is right. You have already done what you should do. Snow Air Emperor nodded sadly. Everyone, get ready. Yi Chen had no distracting thoughts. Life or death depended on this. After 3 breaths, Yi Chen slashed open a crack with his sword. His entire body flew out like a beam of light. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The place where the 4 appeared was the cabin of the 5-colored battleship. The cabin door wasn't closed, which saved a lot of time. Yi Chen arrived at the door in an instant. Along the way, he turned around and saw Stone Emperor. Stone Emperor's entire body was covered in 5-colored light, and his eyes were dull. On Wooling Old Ancestor's body, rays of 5-colored light merged into Stone Emperor's body. Suddenly, Wooling Old Ancestor opened his eyes. "Good lad, you can actually completely comprehend the space profound and escape from my 5-elemental space." Wooling Old Ancestor wasn't angry. Instead, he was happy. With a wave of his hand, the cabin door immediately closed. However, Yichen was faster than he imagined. At the critical moment, he flew out through the gap of the cabin door. As for Scarlet Wind Emperor and the other two, they were a step slower and were trapped inside. Chapter 12:33. Yichen, you must escape. Scarlet Wind Emperor roared. If you want to escape, you'll have to ask if I'm willing. Wuling Old Ancestor's expression darkened. He gave up on refining the Stone Emperor and spread his consciousness across the entire multicolored ship. Under normal circumstances, the puppet warship could only be exited and not entered. However, if the owner of the puppet warship was willing, it was completely possible for the puppet warship to be in an alert state. Arriving on the deck, Yichen raised his speed to the limit and flew out of the protective cover. As long as he left the protective cover with his teleportation ability and the special environment of the Celestial River, it would be very difficult for Wuling Old Ancestor to catch him. One day, he would find Wuling Old Ancestor for revenge, not only for himself but also for the 4 Scarlet Wind Emperor. Seeing that Yichen was about to break through the protective cover, the color of the protective cover suddenly changed from 5 colors to a chaotic color. With a bang, Yichen was bounced back. Not good. Yichen's expression changed greatly. Without thinking, the flying heaven sword in his hand slashed at the protective cover. Gotcha! The multicolored ship was a high-level puppet warship that could withstand many attacks from high-level Monarch Realm experts. Yichen's attack was not inferior to that of ordinary high-level Monarch Realm experts. With one slash, a crack immediately appeared on the protective cover. Although the crack quickly healed, it at least gave Yichen hope. Circulating his sword energy to the limit, Yichen used his strongest sword art, Doomsday Meteor Sword. Suddenly, a lava sword light that could destroy the world burst out and slashed at the protective cover. The protective cover twisted crazily, and with a boom, a wide sword mark appeared. The crack was healing at an astonishing speed. Yichen could not pass through it in time. One more time. Yichen took a deep breath and was about to continue his attack. Can you escape? Unknowingly, Wuling Ancestor was standing on the deck, looking at Yichen coldly. Yichen's strength was beyond his imagination, but as long as he was within his attack range, the opponent could not escape. With a grab, Yichen once again landed in Patriarch Wuling's hand. This is probably fate. For the first time, Yichen felt a trace of despair. Old Ancestor Wuling was too strong, thousands of times stronger than him. There was no way he could contend against him. Although he had experienced countless adversities in the past, and escaping from desperate situations was like eating and drinking to him, it was different this time. When the difference was large to a certain extent, any effort would be useless. The stronger you are, the happier I'll be. Be a good boy and be my puppet. You'll be much stronger than you. You'll be an Earth-grade puppet at the very least, and will have 70% of my power. Patriarch Wuling turned around and walked into the cabin. The moment they saw Yichen, the Scarlet Wind Emperor and the others fell into despair. If even Yichen couldn't escape, who else would avenge them? Yichen. It was unknown what method Patriarch Wuling used on the Scarlet Wind Emperor and the others. The 3 could speak, but they couldn't move. At this moment, the Scarlet Wind Emperor looked at Yichen bitterly. Yichen's eyes had regained their calmness, and an unyielding light flickered in the depths of his eyes. Don't be delusional. My heaven-seizing puppet secret art has never failed. Once you become my puppets, you'll be my puppets for the rest of your lives. There will be no accidents. Patriarch Wuling seemed to know what Yichen was thinking and said indifferently. After releasing Yichen, Patriarch Wuling pointed at his glabella. In the next moment, Yichen's chi, blood, and sword energy all stopped circulating. His entire body seemed to have entered a state of rest, and only his thoughts were still operating. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Patriarch Wuling continued to refine the Stone Emperor. Because he couldn't even use his soul force, Yichen could only use his eyes to see. He saw runes appear on the Stone Emperor's body. These runes seemed to have a life of their own as they drilled in and out of the Stone Emperor's body. When a huge human rune appeared and imprinted on the Stone Emperor's body, the Stone Emperor's aura instantly changed and became very unfamiliar. Purely using soul force to sense it, Yichen couldn't guess that this was the Stone Emperor. At this moment, the Stone Emperor's eyes were dull and lifeless, but his aura was unimaginably strong. Compared to himself, it was hundreds or thousands of times stronger. It was probably comparable to a peak emperor. His aptitude really isn't good. He only has 10% of my strength. Adding on the puppet's lack of intelligence, it would be good if he could use half of his strength in battle. Patriarch Wuling wasn't satisfied with the yellow stare puppet in front of him. To him, it was dispensable and just cannon fodder. It's your turn. Patriarch Wuling made a grabbing motion, and the Snow Air Emperor floated over. The Snow Air Emperor's aptitude was second from the bottom, only a bit better than the Stone Emperor. Soft skin and tender flesh. If I were 10,000 years younger, I might refine you into a pleasure puppet. Nearing the end of his lifespan, Patriarch Wuling didn't have the mood to enjoy himself. An hour later, the Snow Air Emperor had also become a yellow stare puppet. Then, it was the Scarlet Wind Emperor's turn. The Scarlet Wind Emperor's aptitude was third from the top, and also third from the bottom. However, he was an 8th layer life and death realm heavenly emperor, and could easily be refined into a profound grade puppet. This time, it took a lot longer. 12 hours passed before the refinement was completed. The moment the refinement was completed, the Scarlet Wind Emperor's aura expanded endlessly, and only slowed down when it approached the quasi-sovereign level. Patriarch Wuling roughly estimated that the Scarlet Wind Emperor's strength was a bit more than 50% of his own. Of course, whether or not the Scarlet Wind Emperor could bring out 50% of his strength was still unknown. It would depend on whether the Scarlet Wind Emperor's puppet consciousness was high enough, and the puppet's consciousness depended on the user's battle consciousness. This little girl is from the Phoenix clan. Her physique is very powerful, and she is a good material. Patriarch Wuling glanced at the Phoenix Emperor. The Phoenix Emperor said in a panic, "If you refine me into a puppet, my Phoenix clan's elders will not let you go. You're just a junior. Do you think the Phoenix clan will incur enmity with my Spirit clan for you?" The reason why Patriarch Wuling was so unscrupulous was because of the Spirit clan status. The Spirit clan was neither big nor small, and was also a medium-sized clan. There were 5 supremes in the clan. Regardless of whether it was the Demons Alliance or the Human Race Alliance, if they could obtain the Spirit clan's support, their strength would immediately increase by a lot, and they would be able to suppress the other party in a head-on battle. If it was during peaceful times, Patriarch Wuling would really hesitate and think about whether it was worth it. In the end, the Phoenix Emperor could not escape this calamity and was refined into a profound grade puppet. Compared to the Scarlet Wind Emperor, the Phoenix Emperor's aura was slightly inferior. However, the Phoenix Emperor's puppet consciousness was slightly higher than the Scarlet Wind Emperor's. This was due to their aptitude. According to Patriarch Wuling's experience, if they were to fight, the Phoenix Emperor should be slightly better. Even with Patriarch Wuling's quasi-sovereign cultivation, it was a bit difficult to refine 4 puppets at once. However, he could not wait any longer. In his eyes, Yichen was simply a priceless treasure. He really wanted to see how strong Yichen would be after being refined into a puppet. "It's your turn, Yi." Patriarch Wuling waved his hand, and Yichen involuntarily floated over. Chapter 1234. Taking a deep breath, old Ancestor Wuling's eyes shone brightly. Immediately after, a dazzling 5-colored light burst out from his body. This 5-colored light first expanded before suddenly shrinking and entering old Ancestor Wuling's body. When it came out again, it had turned into many 5-colored threads. If one were to look at these 5-colored threads, they would discover that they were made up of groups of tiny runes. They were like gene chains, and these 5-colored threads also contained old Ancestor Wuling's will. Without a sound, countless 5-colored threads drilled into Yichen's body and began to take over Yichen's body and soul. 2 hours passed, and Yichen's eyes started to become dull. He would only wake up once every 10 breaths. "Good lad, your soul consciousness is actually so strong." Old Ancestor Wuling was both shocked and delighted. Previously, when he was refining the Scarlet Wind Emperor and the Fire Sparrow Emperor, it only took him 5 minutes to refine their consciousnesses into puppet consciousnesses. Now that 2 hours had passed, Yi Chen's soul consciousness still hadn't turned into puppet consciousnesses and was still resisting. I want to see how long you can resist for. I hope you won't disappoint me. Gradually, 1.5 hours passed. 4 hours passed. Yi Chen's eyes would only wake up once every 10 minutes. Moreover, they seemed to be awake, but they weren't. They were in a chaotic state. At this moment, if someone used their soul consciousness to observe the interior of Yi Chen's body, they would discover that all the tissues in Yi Chen's body were entrenched with 5-colored threads. It was as if Yi Chen's body was originally scattered, but now it was strung together by the 5-colored threads. Of course, the 5-colored threads had already touched the most basic flesh particles. 6 hours passed, and Yi Chen's eyes were no longer in a dull state. Instead, they turned into 5-colored gems that shone brightly like 2 5-colored gems. It really is an Earth-rank puppet. Old Ancestor Wuling laughed loudly. The symbol of an Earth-rank puppet was that its eyes would emit 5-colored light. The quasi-Earth-rank puppet that was killed by Green-Robed Emperor had a trace of this characteristic. He has become an Earth-rank puppet before he has finished refining. This lad is terrifying. I've gotten lucky. Patriarch Wuling suppressed his joy and continued refining. Wuling Forefather no longer poured the 5-colored strands into Yi Chen's body. He began to condense 5-colored runes and imbue them into Yi Chen's body. He imbued a total of 588 runes into the Stone Man Emperor's body, 622 runes into the Snow Air Emperor's body. The Scarlet Wind Emperor and the Fire Sparrow Emperor's body were about the same. One had 1,444 runes while the other had 1,500 runes. As for Yi Chen, he had already imbued 3,888 runes. Not enough. This old man wants to refine the strongest Earth-grade puppet. I need at least 4,200 runes. 4,000, 4,100, 4,200. The refinement was not over yet. 4,300, 4,500. In the end, 3 days and 3 nights passed. Patriarch Wuling had imbued a total of 4,800 runes. When the last human-shaped rune was imprinted on Yi Chen's body, Yi Chen's aura expanded at the speed of a planet exploding. The aura of an ordinary peak-level emperor, a mid-level peak-level emperor, a top-level peak-level emperor, and a quasi-supreme. Yi Chen's aura only stabilized when the quasi-supreme aura appeared. 70%? No, it's 79% battle prowess. It's infinitely close to 80%. Looking at Yi Chen, Patriarch Wuling felt as if he was looking at a priceless treasure. A puppet with 80% of the original body's strength was equivalent to a super-powerful clone. In the past, he could completely suppress those who were slightly stronger than him. Heaven is helping this old man. Standing up, Patriarch Wuling was in high spirits. His dying body exuded a disdainful aura. From today onwards, you will be called D. Patriarch Wuling gave the name De to Yi Chen. Yes. Yi Chen gave off a very strange feeling. He didn't have the slightest sluggishness and was very obedient. If one observed carefully, one could vaguely distinguish him from a normal life form. After all, there were still some differences between a puppet and a life form, even if this puppet was very perfect. Go and kill him. Suddenly, Patriarch Wuling pointed at the Scarlet Wind Emperor and ordered. Yes. Yi Chen looked at the Scarlet Wind Emperor and pulled out the Flying Heaven Sword. Patriarch Wuling had a playful expression and a hint of scrutiny. He was very confident in other puppets, but he was still a little worried about Yi Chen. Yi Chen's soul consciousness was too tenacious, and he couldn't guarantee that Yi Chen's soul consciousness had completely transformed into a puppet's consciousness. Of course, he wasn't in a hurry. As long as he put in some effort, any hidden dangers would be eliminated sooner or later. Holding the Flying Heaven Sword with both hands, Yi Chen slashed at the Scarlet Wind Emperor with all his strength. Clang. This strike didn't kill the Scarlet Wind Emperor. Unknowingly, a 5-colored light appeared on the surface of the Scarlet Wind Emperor's body. This 5-colored light didn't come from the Scarlet Wind Emperor. With the Scarlet Wind Emperor's strength, he definitely wouldn't be able to block this strike. The source of the five-colored light came from Patriarch Wuling. Of course, he didn't want Yi Chen to really kill the Scarlet Wind Emperor. He was just probing. All right. Patriarch Wuling waved his hand. The Flying Heaven sword was sheathed. Yi Chen took 3 steps back and stood to the side. It's really perfect. If I wasn't at the end of my life, I could use you as my cauldron and possess you. Patriarch Wuling was very satisfied with Yi Chen's performance. There wouldn't be any problems for the time being. I'm tired. Guard the door. With that said, Patriarch Wuling waved his hand and the door to the room next door opened. He slowly walked in. Yi Chen took a few steps forward and stood guard outside the door. A moment passed. Yi Chen stood there motionless. His eyes didn't change and he couldn't sense anything strange. Even his mind didn't fluctuate. He was like a statue with a life aura. After observing with his soul power for a while, Patriarch Wuling retracted his attention. He had refined 5 puppets in a row, especially the last supreme-grade Earth-grade puppet. It had exhausted his mind and spirit energy. He hadn't felt this way in tens of thousands of years. He couldn't help but sigh. With the end of his life approaching, his energy was weakening. Closing his eyes, Patriarch Wuling entered an ethereal state. Yi Chen did not know how much time had passed. Perhaps it had been 3 days, or perhaps 5. Suddenly, his eyes, which had not blinked at all, blinked once, and a trace of intelligence appeared. However, this intelligence was mixed with confusion, as if he was deep in thought. This state didn't last long. After 100 breaths, the intelligence disappeared and he returned to his original state. As for the Scarlet Wind Emperor and the other 3, they were like wax figures as they stood there in a daze. On this day, the 5-colored ship arrived at the periphery of an archipelago. If Yi Chen and company were in a sober state, they would definitely discover that this archipelago was the archipelago that they had passed through previously. On the volcanic island, the smell of sulfur filled the air. If they knew that they would experience such a calamity after leaving the volcanic island, they would probably choose to live in the volcano for several years to guard against ghostly attacks rather than become a puppet. Chapter 12:35. Have we arrived? Patriarch Wuling opened his eyes, and 2 beams of 5-colored light shot out, disappearing along the way. This time, I have to acquire the abyssal fruit. A single abyssal fruit could increase one's lifespan by 5,000 years. Ancestor Wuling was confident that he could become a sovereign within 5,000 years. At that time, he would have a chance to change his fate. The door to the room opened and Patriarch Wuling waved his hand. Yi Chen and the other 4 turned into 5 beams of light and entered the 5-colored space in Patriarch Wuling's palm. Putting away the multicolored ship, Wuling Patriarch looked at the volcanic island. His figure flashed, and he instantly arrived at the mouth of the volcano. Frowning slightly, old Ancestor Wuling hesitated. Every time he entered, he would hesitate for a while. This was not a good place. Even with his strength as a quasi-venerable, he had to be on tenterhooks. If not for the fact that his lifespan was almost up, he would not enter even if he was beaten to death. Forget it. This is the last time. If I don't succeed this time, I can only choose other methods to increase my lifespan. The hesitation on old Ancestor Wuling's face disappeared, and an astonishing light burst forth from his eyes. With a whoosh, his body turned into a 5-colored light and flew down the volcano. After a while, Patriarch Wuling arrived at the mouth of the volcano. To old Ancestor Wuling, the cold air created by the 9 nether cold ice was just the cold air of winter. Even if he didn't circulate his spiritual source, it wouldn't be a big problem. What he was afraid of was the nether ghost guarding the entrance. In hell, not to mention ordinary ghosts, there were powerful ghosts such as the Yellow Springs ghosts, the nether ghosts, the impermanence ghosts, and the monarch-like ghost kings. Ordinary people didn't know about these things. Even quasi-venerables didn't know much about them. Only Supremes knew some information about them. As for Wuling Old Ancestor, he had once obtained a tattered ghost book, so he more or less knew about the levels of ghosts. The strength of ghosts couldn't be judged by the strength of the universe because they didn't have a physical body. Unless it was a supreme martial art, normal attacks would be ineffective against them. This was also why ghosts were so difficult to deal with. Their martial arts were almost useless. Stepping on the 9 nether frozen ice, Ancestor Wooling walked toward the black lava step by step. Glug glug glug, the black magma made a bubbling sound, but what came out was bone-chilling cold. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed towards Ancestor Wooling. "We have fought so many times. Why don't you know your place?" Old Ancestor Wooling waved his hand and a 5-colored light spread out, turning into a barrier that blocked the black shadow. Bang! The black shadow bounced back, but a layer of ice formed on the multicolored barrier, showing signs of collapsing. The black shadow floated above the black magma, and the blackness on its body gradually faded, revealing a face without any signs of life. This face was very strange, as if it was wearing a mask. Its eyes had no pupils, only sclera. No matter from which angle you looked at it, you would feel that it was looking at you. That kind of cold and vicious gaze was like maggots in the tarsal bone, impossible to get rid of. Old Ancestor Wooling frowned. With his lethality against ghosts, it was really difficult for him to eliminate the other party. Moreover, it was a little irrational to fight to the death with a nether ghost. Form the formation. Wooling Old Ancestor opened his right hand, and Yi-Chin, Scarlet Wind Emperor, and Fire Sparrow Emperor rushed out. The 3 of them formed a square formation with Wooling Old Ancestor, surrounding the nether ghost in the center. In the next moment, a 5-colored light surged out from the 4 of them, forming a 5-colored cube that sealed the nether ghost. "Come back." After putting away Yi-Chen and the other 2, Wooling Old Ancestor dove into the black magma. This 4 symbols barrier couldn't seal the nether ghost for long, so he had to enter hell in a short time. In the black magma, it was bone-chilling. Wooling Old Ancestor circulated his spiritual source and formed a spiritual source barrier outside his body. Even so, traces of cold aura still passed through the barrier and reached Wooling Old Ancestor's body. Gradually, 2 specks of dim light appeared below. That was the entrance to hell. When the dim lights were right in front of him, he discovered that it was an illusory door. The door had 2 plates, and there were 2 torches on it. The torches were burning with ghostly flames. Wooling Old Ancestor took a deep breath and pushed the door open. His figure flashed, and he flew in. Above the black magma, the 5-colored cube collapsed. The nether ghost looked around, and when he saw that there was no one, he slowly sank into the black magma. In hell, there was no sunlight and there were no bright plants. Although the entire environment wasn't pitch black, it was very dark, like dusk on a human planet. Dead silence, bleak, and gloomy. This was hell, and there were no signs of life. If a normal person stayed here for a period of time, they would go crazy if they weren't killed by the ghosts. This is the 5th time I've come to hell. I hope my luck is better. Wooling Old Ancestor was already used to the environment here, so he didn't make a fuss. After all, in most people's imagination, hell should be like this. After looking around, Wooling Old Ancestor suddenly teleported toward the east. After about 3 days, Wooling Old Ancestor saw a terrifying mountain that was 500,000 feet tall. This mountain was filled with cold aura, and it wasn't as open as the mountains in the human world. Of course, it was grand. In hell, mountain peaks were also called Een Mountains, and they were treasured lands that powerful ghosts fought over. Those who successfully seized a Een Mountain would have the title of Mountain Ghost, which was equivalent to the lord of a city. Many ghosts who weren't strong enough would fight to join them and become one of their subordinates. According to the size of the Een Mountain, one could tell how powerful the power of the Een Mountain's master, Mountain Ghost, was. The smallest Een Mountain was 300,000 feet tall, followed by 300,000 feet, 500,000 feet, and 10 million feet. The Een Mountain, which was 100,000 feet tall, had the smallest power. 300,000 feet tall was already a small scale. The 500,000 feet tall Een Mountain was considered a powerful power. After all, there were differences in strength among mountain ghosts. The weakest was a Grade 1 mountain ghost, and the 500,000 feet tall Een Mountain ghost was a Grade 3 mountain ghost. As for the nether ghosts that guarded the entrance to hell, they weren't even mountain ghosts. Otherwise, they wouldn't be used to guard the entrance to hell. If this 500,000 feet tall Een mountain had a grade 3 mountain ghost, Wuling Old Ancestor definitely wouldn't have come. He was confident that he could handle a grade 1 mountain ghost, but he wouldn't be able to handle a grade 2 mountain ghost. A grade 3 mountain ghost could completely devour him, unless a few powerful quasi-venerables like the azure-robed emperor came. This Een mountain was discovered by Wuling Old Ancestor the second time he came. What surprised him even more was that this Een mountain was actually sealed. From the foot of the mountain to the peak, there were a total of 49 seals. Each seal corresponded to a layer. In other words, there were a total of 49 layers. When Wuling Old Ancestor came the second time, he didn't rashly charge in. On his third time, he was nearing the end of his lifespan, so he took the risk and fought his way to the 34th layer. On his fourth time, he fought his way to the 38th layer. This was his fifth time. According to the Tattered Ghost book, every Een mountain had a chance of growing a nether tree. The nether tree would bear a fruit every 10,000 years. This fruit was the nether fruit that could increase one's lifespan. Wuling Old Ancestor didn't see the nether tree on the 38th layer. He pinned his hopes on the 40th layer and above. Chapter 12:36. At the foot of the mountain, there was a greeting platform that emanated a gloomy aura. It was over 10,000 feet in both width and length, and in the middle of it was an unknown skull the size of a small hill. The eyes of the skull were burning with a ghostly fire, as if it had intelligence. The Een mountain and the guest stand were connected by a stone path that was tens of thousands of feet long. Red lanterns made of paper were hung on both sides of the stone path. When the chilly wind blew, the red lanterns swayed and made a rattling noise. At that moment, there were already 4 figures standing on the platform. The aura they exuded was no weaker than Old Ancestor Wuling's. However, just like Old Ancestor Wuling, these people were very old. Although their auras were strong, they seemed to be dying. These old guys are here too. Old Ancestor Wuling's eyes flickered when he saw the 4 figures on the platform. Old Monster Wuling, since you're here, why don't you come over and have a chat? A skinny old man said to Old Ancestor Wuling with a hoarse smile. Old Een Yang Monster, it's fate that I can see you every time. Old Ancestor Wuling laughed and instantly appeared on the platform. The old Een Yang Monster he mentioned was a quasi-venerate of the evil spirit race called Een Yang South. He was older than Old Ancestor Wuling and had lived for nearly 110,000 years. The reason he could surpass the limit was that he had obtained 2 netherworld fruits, which increased his lifespan by 10,000 years. Een Yang So was proficient in the profound of Yin and Yang. His ultimate technique, Een Yang Extreme Change, was one of the most difficult ultimate techniques Old Ancestor Wuling had ever seen. Hee hee, I'm lucky every time I see you. I hope it'll be the same this time. Een Yang So's eyes were dark, and the evil aura around him was not inferior to the ghostly aura in hell. Ahem, Old Monster Wuling, since we can meet here, why don't we work together to pass the trial? The old woman standing not far away coughed with her walking stick. Old Ancestor Wuling looked at her and said hesitantly, "This should be Night Ghost Granny." "That's right, it's me. What do you think?" Night Ghost Granny was a quasi-venerate of the Yaksha race. She had lived for more than 14,000 years. Working together to pass the trial seems to be a good idea. As for these 2, I don't know them. Please introduce them to me. There were too many old monsters of the various races. Old Ancestor Wuling did not know all of them, especially some of them who had been in seclusion for a long time. Een Yang So sneered, "This is Ancestor Herculean of the Barbarian tribe, and this is Ancestor Golden Light of the Demon tribe." Patriarch Hercules was tall and sturdy. He was more than 2 meters tall, but his back was a bit stooped. His eyes flickered with an aura of death, a sign that he was close to the end of his lifespan. Patriarch Golden Light was the complete opposite of Patriarch Herculean. He was extremely short, clearly a midget. His murky eyes occasionally flashed with a golden light that was extremely sharp. In the outside world, they were all mortal enemies. However, in here, everyone was here to survive. There was no point in fighting to the death. This was also the main reason why the four of them did not kill each other before this. I have long heard of Patriarch Wooling's name. Now that I see you, you are nothing special. Patriarch Herculean seemed to have some animosity towards Patriarch Wooling. His tone was unfriendly. Old Ancestor Wooling wasn't a kind person. He put on a fake smile and said, "The barbarian race seems to be a bunch of arrogant people. However, the geniuses of the barbarian race are not bad. They were refined into puppets and their bodies are very strong." Patriarch Herculean snorted coldly. A ferocious glint appeared in his eyes as he said, "Let me ask you, did you kidnap my old friend, Heavenly Wolf's seventh disciple? If you know what's good for you, you'd best return him to his original form. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." The Heavenly Wolf you speak of should be old monster Heavenly Wolf, right? He's also quite a character. However, everything needs evidence. Did you personally see me kidnap his seventh disciple? Although Patriarch Wooling wasn't afraid of Patriarch Herculean or old monster Heavenly Wolf, he wasn't willing to form a death grudge with them. Thus, he absolutely wouldn't admit to it. Of course, he had indeed refined old monster Heavenly Wolf's seventh disciple into a puppet. Back then, that Junior had also said that he was old monster Heavenly Wolf's disciple. Old monster Wooling, don't try to deny it. I know you did it. Patriarch Herculean was 70% certain that old monster Heavenly Wolf had done it. As long as old monster Heavenly Wolf admitted to it, this matter would be easy to handle. Old monster Herculean, do you think I'm afraid of you? I'll say it again. This matter has nothing to do with me. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Even if I have to get injured, I'll kill you. Alright, the two of you. This is the infernal realm. You are not allowed to mention anything that happened in the outside world. We can talk about our grudges after we leave the infernal realm. I'll say the ugly words first. If anyone dares to cause trouble again, please mind your manners. Old Inyang didn't want to bother with Patriarch Wooling and Patriarch Herculean. However, these two were quasi-exalts. If they caused trouble, they might alarm some of the nearby powerful mountain ghosts. Old Inyang is right. I came to the infernal realm for the abyssal fruit, not to listen to your quarrel. Granny Night Ghost spoke up as well. Patriarch Herculean had always had a fiery temper. Just as he was about to speak, Patriarch Golden Light stopped him with a glance. Don't be rash. We'll talk about this later. Patriarch Golden Light sent a voice transmission to Patriarch Herculean. Patriarch Herculean clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. Then, he snorted coldly and turned to the side, not looking at Patriarch Wooling. This old fellow is truly despicable. If I have the chance, I must kill him. Otherwise, he will only be a scourge, Patriarch Wooling thought coldly. At some point in time, the reception platform had fallen silent. The 5 old monsters were all silent. Granny Night Ghost even sat cross-legged on the platform, meditating and adjusting her breathing. About 3 days passed. The ghostly fire in the eyes of the giant skull on the reception platform suddenly expanded. It opened its mouth and let out a sinister voice. Welcome to the Weeping Ghost Mountain. Each person who enters the mountain must pay 10 ghost stones. Otherwise, you will suffer a calamity. Granny Night Ghost opened her eyes. With a flip of her palm, she tossed 10 pitch-black stones into the skull's mouth. Patriarch Wooling and the others did the same. Ghost stones were the currency of hell. They were equivalent to the primordial stones of the outside world, but they were countless times more precious. The Weeping Ghost Mountain was rather strange. If one didn't hand over the ghost stones, they would indeed suffer a series of misfortune. One of the old monsters who traveled with Patriarch Wooling refused to hand over the ghost stones because he didn't believe in this. As a result, he heard the sound of ghosts crying from the moment he entered the Weeping Ghost Mountain. In the end, he had a mental breakdown and disappeared inside the Een Mountain. As people from the outside world, the 5 of them naturally didn't have any ghost stones. However, they could rob in hell. Some of the more powerful ghosts would always have 1 or 2 ghost stones. Accumulating them, it wasn't difficult to get 10 ghost stones. After handing over 10 ghost stones, Patriarch Wooling still had 14 ghost stones. It was enough for him to do it again. You are all generous people. Please enter the mountain. The skull cackled. The red lanterns on both sides of the stone path leading to the reception platform lit up one by one. "Let's go!" Old Man Yin led the way and walked on the stone path. The moment the five of them walked on the stone path, the mournful sound of a zither rang out. It was as if there was a large band performing around them. "Damn, this is strange." Patriarch Herculean cursed. The five of them walked further and further away. Finally, they disappeared at the end of the stone path. On the reception platform, the skull cackled. 38 more. 38 more. Not far. Chapter 12:37. The 500,000 feet tall Wailing Ghost Mountain had a total of 49 layers of seals. In other words, there was a seal every 100,000 feet long. The 100,000 feet long mark was just the surface height. The five of them could easily pass through the first 20 layers without having to work together. The remaining 10 layers were not difficult either. It would just take them some time. The 31st layer became more difficult. Back then, Patriarch Wuling had spent a lot of effort and even suffered injuries to reach the 38th layer. It was also because of his injuries that he stopped at the 38th layer. The 35th layer. The 36th layer. The 38th layer. Finally, Patriarch Wuling arrived at the 39th layer. There were no enemies on the 39th layer. There was only a staircase leading to the 40th layer. The staircase was about 13,333 meters long. Of course, Patriarch Wuling and the other four did not think that the staircase was that simple. There must be something more to it. As expected, the moment they stepped on the staircase, the five of them immediately felt a gravitational force pressing down on them. So it's a test of resistance to gravity. Patriarch Hercules smiled confidently. As a barbarian quasi-venerable, he was very satisfied with his physical body. He was also a body cultivator. Interesting. That suits me. Night Ghost Granny laughed. 30,000 meters. 60,000 meters. 90,000 meters. 100,000 meters. After 100,000 meters, the first person to feel the strain was Yin South. In terms of strength, he might not be the strongest among the five, but he was definitely in the top 3. However, in terms of resistance to gravity, he was the last. If Yichen appeared, he would definitely find that the gravity here was countless times stronger than that of a white dwarf star. Neutron stars were nothing compared to it. Ordinary top emperors would be crushed into powder in an instant. 11,000 meters. Patriarch Wuling's forehead was covered in cold sweat. There are 23,333 meters left. I have to get through it. Patriarch Wuling's physical body was not weak, but compared to Patriarch Hercules, Night Ghost Granny, and Patriarch Golden Light, he was undoubtedly much weaker. 12,000 meters. Apart from Patriarch Wuling and the other two, Yin So's bones were already making creaking sounds, as if they would be crushed at any time. Patriarch Wuling was slightly better, but he was also at the end of his rope. Yin extreme change. Yin So shouted and a shadow condensed behind him. The silhouette was exactly the same as his, but the expression was extremely cold. It did not seem illusory. Old Ancestor Wuling tilted his head to look at Yin So, and a trace of fear appeared on his face. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell that Yin So had shifted a portion of the gravity to the figure behind him. No one dared to underestimate such a miraculous ability. Patriarch Hercules and the other two also knew about Yin So's ability. There were no treasures appearing at the moment, and there were no conflicts between them. Once a precious treasure appeared, everyone would be a competitor. In this place, there was no distinction between races. Who would have the last laugh? Yin So of Mountain. Patriarch Wuling suddenly let out a low shout, and a 5-colored armor appeared on his body. The moment the armor appeared, the vast and mighty gravity disappeared like a clay ox in the sea. Only a few % of the gravity could affect Patriarch Wuling. This was the 5-elemental armor formed by the 5-colored space. It had its own space inside. Although it looked like a thin layer, for gravity to affect Wuling Patriarch's body, it would need to travel tens of millions of miles. In the end, the 5 of them successfully reached the 40th floor. During this time, only Yin Old Man and Wuling Patriarch had revealed some of their trump cards. Herculean Patriarch, Golden Light Patriarch, and Night Ghost Granny had relied on their powerful bodies to hold on. When they reached the 40th floor, the 5 of them did not attempt the trial immediately. Instead, they each found a place to sit down and took out the inner cores of the water monsters to replenish their energy. Although the 39th floor was not dangerous, the consumption was too great. At every moment, energy was flowing away like water. After half a cup of tea's time, the 5 of them opened their eyes one after another. 49 layers of seals. Every 10 layers, the difficulty will increase by 1 level. Now we must all work together. We'll talk when the treasure appears, Night Ghost Granny said in a hoarse voice. That would be best. Yin Old Man nodded. The shadow behind him did not disappear. Instead, it became more solid. The environment of the 40th floor made one's heart numb. As far as the eye could see, it was a boundless black void. Above them were layers of dark clouds, and below them was an immeasurably deep abyss. As for how deep it was impossible to tell. As soon as their soul powers entered it, they immediately disappeared. What made the 5 of them startled was that this black void obviously had a forbidden formation. The 5 of them wanted to fly up, but they could only jump 30 to 50 zhang. Any higher and they would fall back down. There was nothing they could do to stop it. Thankfully, the black void was connected by a chain so thick that it would take 2 people to wrap their arms around it. Although the chain was covered in rust, it at least looked very sturdy. Patriarch Golden Light's Golden Strike Wave was unable to cut through the chain. There are 10 chains here. We'll choose the 5 in the middle. If we find any enemies, we'll work together to kill them. Does anyone have any objections? Yin Old Man said, I'll choose this one. Night Ghost Granny chose the 3rd chain. She was a cautious person and did not want to be stuck in the middle. Next, Golden Light Patriarch and Hercules Patriarch chose the 6th and 7th chains respectively. Yin Old Man chose the 4th. I have fate with 5. I'll take the 5th one. There was only 1 chain left in the middle. He had no choice, but he did not care. The 5 of them were very fast. In the blink of an eye, they had traveled a long distance. They still could not see the stone platform behind them. It was covered by the black void. Suddenly, Ancestor Golden Light pointed down and said with slight surprise, What's that? In the depths of the black void below, 2 huge lights were approaching. They were dozens of feet in size. Wuling Old Ancestor scanned them with his soul force, and his heart skipped a beat. How were these lights? They were clearly a pair of eyes, and the strangest thing was that he could only see the eyes. He couldn't see who the owner of these eyes was. It was as if his body had merged with the black void. Ghost beasts. Wuling Patriarch said. Oh, you know them? Everyone looked at Wuling Patriarch. Wuling Patriarch explained, Ghost beasts are not pure ghosts. They are ferocious ghosts formed by countless ghosts. The weakest ghost beast is equivalent to a grade 1 mountain ghost. They are not easy to deal with. In hell, mountain ghost was a title. It was not a type of ghost. There were 3 types of powerful ghosts. From the weakest to the strongest, they were Yellow Springs Ghost, Nether Ghost, and Impermanence Ghost. These 3 types of ghosts could become mountain ghosts. Of course, Impermanence Ghosts were much stronger than mountain ghosts of the same level. Then what is the level of the ghost beast below? Yin Old Man asked. Wuling Patriarch examined it carefully and said hesitantly, This is my first time seeing a ghost beast. But there is a red line in its eyes. It is at least a grade 1 mountain ghost. This time, Wuling Patriarch was wrong. Ghost beasts did use the red line in their eyes to identify their strength. But he did not realize that there was a darker red line below the red line. In other words, this ghost beast already had the strength of a grade 2 mountain ghost. Chapter 12:38. Everyone, don't disturb it. Although it's approaching, it hasn't attacked yet. There's still room for maneuver, said Patriarch Wuling. Although he wasn't afraid of a grade 1 mountain ghost, ghosts were the hardest to kill. The nether ghost that guarded the entrance to hell wasn't even a grade 1 mountain ghost, but it still wouldn't be able to kill him in a short amount of time. Patriarch Wuling estimated that even if the 5 of them worked together, they wouldn't be able to kill it in less than an hour. Unfortunately, old Ancestor Wuling's words were in vain. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying roar came from below. Then, the pair of red eyes grew larger and larger, and a bone-chilling wind swept up from below. Everyone stopped in their tracks. The night ghost granny's cloudy eyes shone brightly as she said in a low voice, "Everyone, let's work together to kill this beast. Otherwise, both you and I will be in danger." As she spoke, the night ghost granny shook her walking stick. Countless staff shadows shot down from above and towards the ghost beast. However, it wasn't the staff shadows that landed on the ghost beast first. Instead, it was a golden beam of light from Patriarch Golden Light. The golden beam of light was dazzling and as thick as a bucket. The black void below was also dyed by the intense golden light. They could vaguely see a huge shadow rising up and rushing towards the 5 of them. Next, Patriarch Wuling spread his fingers and slammed down with a palm print. The palm print was colorful. After it left his palm, it grew larger and larger until it was twice the size of the shadow below. It seemed to be endless and could contain the heavens and earth. Yin Yang So's attack was the strangest. He stretched out his right hand and a stream of air formed in his palm. Then, the shadow behind him injected some power into the stream of air. Immediately, the transparent stream of air turned chaotic. In the blur, one could see the dividing line between the 2 streams of air. It was similar to the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram. The last to attack was the Herculean ancestor. His attack was much simpler. He simply threw a punch downwards. However, no one dared to underestimate this punch. It contained the most powerful esoteric power. As the punch was thrown, the power acted on the black sky, creating endless ripples. Ha, 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 boom. First, a ball of dazzling light exploded. That was old Ancestor Golden Light's golden light pillar colliding with the ghost beast. Then, countless staff shadows descended from the sky and struck the ghost beast, forcing it to pause for a moment. Then, old Ancestor Wuling's 5-colored palm imprint arrived. It was like a huge ancient mountain pressing down on the ghost beast, pressing it down for dozens of miles. Just as the ghost beast rushed up again, old Ancestor Yin-Yang's chaotic air current flashed like a dim meteor and drilled into the ghost beast's body. In the next moment, the ghost beast let out a shrill roar. Chaotic flames exploded from its body, almost drowning half of its body. That was not the end. Old Ancestor Herculean's fist wind was thousands of times stronger than the most violent whirlwind in the starry sky. With a shake and a blow, half of the ghost beast's body began to disintegrate and melt. The next moment, the ghost beast's body began to melt. This old monster is not to be underestimated. Patriarch Wuling's pupils shrank. The power of Patriarch Hercules made him wary. If it had been a normal ghost beast, it would have been seriously injured under the combined attack of the 5 of them. However, this ghost beast was many times stronger than they had imagined. It turned around in its illusory state and absorbed the disintegrating half of its body back into its body. Its ferocity did not diminish as it flew towards the night ghost granny, who was the closest to it. "You're asking for it?" The night ghost granny was not afraid at all. Her skinny body suddenly expanded, growing from 1.5 meters to almost 2 meters. A pair of wings spread out behind her, covering the sky like 2 black clouds. The walking stick in her hand suddenly changed shape, turning into a long spear that glowed with a gray light. Holy shadow light! With the gray spear in her hand, the night ghost granny let out a low growl and smashed the spear down. The spear shone brilliantly, but in the depths of the light, there was an inexhaustible shadow. The light and the shadow coexisted, and it was a strange sight. Holy shadow light! It looks like your light ultimacy and shadow ultimacy have merged even more deeply. Yin-Yang Old Man was the person who was most familiar with the night ghost granny. Although she had not created a supreme martial art, she had created a lesser supreme martial art. The so-called lesser supreme martial art was a martial art that contained ultimacy. Although it was not as powerful as the 5 elements, yin and yang, light and darkness, or time and space, it was a system of its own. Light and shadow were natural opposites, and they were more profound than water and fire. Of course, light ultimacy was not light ultimacy. There were differences between the two. Light ultimacy was purer, while light ultimacy was more inclusive. In comparison, lesser supreme martial arts were far inferior to supreme martial arts. However, lesser supreme martial arts were easier to increase in power. After all, before becoming a supreme, everyone was just scratching the surface. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the ghost beast and the night ghost granny clashed. Yin-Yang old man and the others were shocked. The night ghost granny was not the ghost beast's opponent. She flew backward and was about to fall into the black void. Whoosh whoosh. The wings on her back flapped crazily and the night ghost granny landed on the 10th chain. Her face was gloomy. This beast is not just a grade 1 mountain ghost. It must be a grade 2 mountain ghost. Although she had not used 100% of her strength, she had used at least 90% of it. Hearing this, Ancestor Wuling took advantage of the moment when the ghost beast was stopped by the night ghost granny to look at its eyes. Under the bright red line, there was a dim red line. It was indeed not a grade 1 mountain ghost. He laughed bitterly and said, "It is indeed not a grade 1 mountain ghost. It was my mistake." After being stopped by the night ghost granny, the ghost beast did not attack again. It clearly knew that with its strength, it could only fight 1 or 2 of them. There were 5 of them. With its strength, it could not devour them at all. If the fight dragged on, it would probably be the one to lose. The ghost beast roared, and the sound waves spread into the depths of the black void. Ancestor Wuling frowned. He had a bad feeling. Not good. It's calling for its companions. The first to sense that something was wrong was Ancestor Golden Light. His eyes seemed to be made of gold, and he could see very far into the black void. Roar, roar, roar. As soon as Ancestor Golden Light finished speaking, countless roars came from below. Countless pairs of eyes, like bright lamps, appeared one after another. It was impossible to count them all. Few of these eyes had a red line, but there were so many of them. It should be known that ordinary ghost beasts had the strength of an ordinary quasi-venerate. With so many of them, only a supreme being would be able to kill anyone who encountered them. Without any hesitation, the 5 of them rushed forward along the chain. They could not let the ghost beasts surround them, or they would die without a doubt. Chapter 1239. Night Ghost Granny's speed was the fastest. The pair of wings on her back flapped violently, and she instantly traveled hundreds of kilometers. Next was Patriarch Golden Light, followed by Patriarch Yin-Yang Sod and Patriarch Wuling. Patriarch Herculean's speed was the slowest, but that was only in comparison. He stepped on the chains, and every step he took covered 1 to 200 kilometers. Unfortunately, there were too many ghost beasts. The entire black void was filled with ghost beasts, and the roars of these ghost beasts contained soul attacks. Everyone could withstand a single ghost beast's roar, but when hundreds and thousands of ghost beasts roared together, the terrifying soul sound waves were like a tsunami that spread in all directions. Patriarch Wuling grunted. His soul felt as though it had been struck by lightning, and he felt a piercing pain. This is only the Yin Mountain of Level 3 mountain ghosts. Why are there so many ghost beasts? Patriarch Wuling couldn't figure it out. While he was in a daze, Patriarch Wuling's vision blurred. 7 ghost beasts appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Earth One, come out. In the past, Patriarch Wuling could deal with 7 ordinary ghost beasts alone. However, now was the time to fight for time. If he was a step slower, he might be devoured by the following ghost beasts. With a wave of his hand, Yichen, Scarlet Wind Emperor, and Fire Sparrow Emperor appeared at the same time. Attack! As he spoke, Patriarch Wuling took the lead to attack, and a 5-colored palm pressed over. Just like Patriarch Wuling, Yichen and the other 2 waved their palms and attacked fiercely. Their palm techniques were exactly the same as Patriarch Wuling's, and they all contained the 5 elemental profundity. Boom! The profundity contained in supreme martial arts was flawless, and it also had a strong destructive power against ghost beasts. 4 5-colored palm prints blasted out side by side, and an opening was immediately blasted out. Swoosh! Patriarch Wuling put away Yi Chen and the other two, and his figure flashed as he rushed over through the opening. Gradually, everyone could see the stone platform on the other side. Once they reached it, they could leave the 40th level and enter the 41st level seal. Scram! Behind them, Patriarch Herculean was blocked by the strongest ghost beast. Both sides fought wildly, and Patriarch Herculean's angry voice could be heard from time to time. Even the heavens are helping me. This old monster is dead for sure. Old Ancestor Wuling glanced back and revealed a smile. If he were to make a move against Old Ancestor Herculean, the chances of him killing Old Ancestor Herculean were close to zero. However, once Old Ancestor Herculean was surrounded by ghost beasts, as long as he was not a prime, he would not have any hope of surviving. Unfortunately, before Patriarch Wuling's smile could be fully displayed, he saw a scene that shocked and angered him. A disc had appeared in Herculean Patriarch's hand. The disc was black and white, and there was a black and white air current slowly flowing in the center. Herculean Patriarch flicked his hand, and the disc flew into the air. In the next moment, a black air current shot toward Herculean Patriarch, and a white air current landed on Wuling Patriarch. Then, Patriarch Wuling felt time and space change. When he came back to his senses, there was no longer nothing in front of him. Instead, it was the strongest ghost beast. Patriarch Hercules had appeared in front of him and was running for his life. Old Herculean monster, I'm not done with you. Patriarch Wuling's eyes were bloodshot. How could he not tell that the black and white disc was a treasure that could shift positions? It could switch positions with another target. Unfortunately, he had become Patriarch Herculean Patriarch's target. Old Herculean monster, I'm sorry. We'll meet again at the 41st seal. I hope to see you again. Patriarch Herculean Patriarch chuckled and continued running without looking back. Damn it. When I escape, I'll definitely make you pay the price in blood. Patriarch Wuling hated Patriarch Herculean to the bone. If not for Patriarch Herculean Patriarch, he would have reached the stone platform on the other side without any danger. However, he also knew that he had to get rid of this ghost beast leader as soon as possible. Although this ghost beast leader, which was equivalent to a level 2 mountain ghost, found it strange that its opponent had changed, it did not care. What it needed were souls. It did not matter who it was. Roar! The ghost beast leader was not in a hurry to attack. It roared and summoned its subordinates. 5 elements seal. Patriarch Wuling forced himself to calm down. He stretched out his palm and flipped it over. Immediately, a 5-colored cube enveloped the ghost beast leader, trapping it inside. 5 elements escape technique. After doing all this, Patriarch Wuling's body emitted an astonishing 5-colored light. He turned into a 5-colored meteor and shot out. However, as soon as he left, the 5-colored seal collapsed. How could the ghost beast leader watch its prey escape? It opened its huge mouth and a black flame shot out. It instantly collided with the 5-colored meteor. Poochie! As if a spark had landed on a cotton cloth, the 5-colored light immediately tore a small hole. Patriarch Wuling's speed suddenly decreased. He was like a leaking ball and began to become unstable. Hell's fire! Patriarch Wuling exclaimed. The black flame that the ghost beast leader spat out wasn't an ordinary flame. It was the most mystical Hell's fire. Hell's fire contained the will of hell and could burn almost anything. Even a soul that came into contact with it would turn into ashes, never to be reincarnated. He did not expect that the ghost beast leader had mastered a trace of Hell's fire. The short period of instability caused Patriarch Wuling to be completely surrounded by ghost beasts. There were ghost beasts everywhere. At a glance, there were hundreds of them. Damn it, you forced me to use the puppet array. I will definitely take revenge for this. As a quasi-venerable, old ancestor, Wuling's ability to survive was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. His hands rapidly formed hand seals. In an instant he had formed thousands of hand seals. Suddenly, with a low roar, a huge circular formation descended from the sky and landed on the ground. One figure after another appeared in the circular formation. These figures were not real people. Instead, they were wooden people. These wooden people were like a tide. They were born in a frenzy. Soon, their numbers surpassed the ghost beasts by 10 times, and they were still increasing. The puppet array was one of the heaven-seizing puppet's secret technique. This array could continuously create wooden puppets. Although each wooden puppet only had 1% of Patriarch Wooling's strength, they had the advantage in numbers. In order to refine this array, Patriarch Wooling had spent countless years, endless energy, and countless materials. Sometimes, he would think that if he had not spent so much time on the heaven-seizing puppet's secret technique, he might have already become a paragon. With the obstruction and impact of the puppet array, Patriarch Wooling successfully broke out of the encirclement. Just as he was about to enter the 41st seal, Patriarch Wooling looked back with a pained expression. He had not used this puppet array many times in his life. In the past, when he used it, he could recycle it. Now, he could only waste it here. Old Monster Herculean. With a furious roar, Patriarch Wooling rushed into the 41st seal. Behind him, tens of thousands of wooden puppets had already emerged from the puppet array. These wooden puppets contained Patriarch Wooling's martial will and the power of the 5 elements. They were more or less harmful to ghost beasts. Chapter 1240. When Ancestor Hercules saw Wooling Old Ancestor appear at the 41st layer of the seal, a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. As a quasi-venerable old monster who had lived for nearly 100,000 years, it was impossible for him not to have some life-saving abilities. If he had one, then others definitely had one as well. However, he didn't know what Wooling Old Ancestor's life-saving ability was. Herculean old monster, I'll fight you to the death. Patriarch Wooling acted as though he had seen his enemy. He immediately summoned Yi Chen and the other 2 to attack Patriarch Herculean. You think I'm afraid of you? This time, it was Ancestor Wooling who took action. Ancestor Hercules felt that he was on the right side. A punch was thrown out, and the boundless fist energy acted on the void, stirring up waves of ripples. Everything in the world was in a state of movement, and movement required power. Even the operation of one's thoughts required power to be propelled. When the profound meaning of power reached its limit, it would be close to the great completion of a supreme martial art. In the early stages, one's power would be able to defeat everything. Boom! Old Ancestor Wooling was sent flying. He wasn't Old Ancestor Herculean's match in a head-on confrontation. His opponent wasn't an ordinary quasi-venerable either. However, Patriarch Wooling wasn't just that. He was just testing how strong Patriarch Herculean was. Great 5 elements capture. As Wooling Patriarch retreated, his hands formed seals at lightning speed. In the next moment, a huge and majestic 5-colored shadow appeared behind him. It was like a god, and when the god opened its eyes, the sky and earth changed color. As Wooling Patriarch extended his palm, the 5-colored shadow's huge palm also reached out and grabbed Patriarch Hercules. Good, look at my totem golden body. Physique refinement kings were already superior to other martial artists in terms of spirit body. What was more terrifying was that physique refinement kings could also cultivate body-refining martial arts like the 9 Revolutions Golden Body and the Totem Golden Body. Even if they were at the same rank 8 spirit body or rank 9 spirit body, the one who cultivated the 9 Revolutions Golden Body or the Totem Golden Body would be more than twice or even 10 times stronger than their opponent. Just by relying on their mortal body, they would be invincible. Suddenly, the Herculean ancestor's body shone with an intense dark golden light. On the surface of his skin, dark golden light patterns started to converge. These light patterns were like living creatures, drilling and drilling around his skin, eventually forming into a perfect totem tattoo. Buzz. The moment the totem tattoo was formed, the 5-colored hand reached out. Patriarch Hercules let him grab him. Crunch. The 5-colored hand grabbed the Herculean Patriarch and suddenly exerted force as if it wanted to crush his body. However, no matter how much force the 5-colored hand exerted, the Herculean Patriarch remained impregnable. The dark golden tattoos on his body even pushed the 5-colored hand away a little, not giving it the best angle to exert force. One of the 5 great body-tempering martial arts of the barbarian tribe, Totem Golden Body? Old Ancestor Wooling frowned. The barbarian tribe basically walked the path of body refinement, and they had the most powerful body refinement martial arts. There were only one or two in the human tribe that could compare to the 5 great body refinement martial arts of the barbarian tribe. As for the spirit tribe, there was none. Old man, take a punch from me as well. The power of the 5-colored hand grew weaker. Herculean Patriarch gave a low shout and broke free of the 5-colored hand's restraints. Then he punched at Wuling Patriarch. This punch was incomparably ferocious, incomparably wild. The powerful fist force even affected the surrounding space, making everyone feel as though they had returned to the primordial era. At this moment, Wuling Ancestor's old strength had already been used up and he hadn't gathered any new strength. In a hurry, he definitely wouldn't be able to block this fist. Although even if he forcefully attacked, the other party wouldn't be able to hurt him in a short period of time, he would still lose face. Earth first. Wuling Patriarch ordered. Yi Chen blocked in front of Wuling Patriarch and struck out with his palm. There was a loud bang. A large amount of blood spurted out from the corner of Yi Chen's mouth as he flew backward. Herculean Patriarch's fist force had been blocked and weakened by more than half. It was easily destroyed by Wuling Patriarch. What a powerful puppet! Herculean Patriarch looked at Yi Chen in shock. He didn't take Yi Chen seriously at first. He thought that it was just an ordinary puppet that had at most 50% of Wuling Patriarch's strength. However, that attack just now had at least 70 to 80% of Wuling Patriarch's strength. A genius of the human tribe? Patriarch Golden Light's eyes were sharp. Although the aura that Yi Chen emitted came from the same source as Wuling Patriarch's, there was a faint hint of something else. I wonder where this old monster found such a top genius of the human tribe. Patriarch Golden Light's expression was a little gloomy. The human tribe and the demon tribe were one. They would prosper together and suffer together. Such a genius of the human tribe would definitely be a great general in the future. His eyes turned and Patriarch Golden Light looked at Wuling Patriarch with a cold gaze. However, this coldness was quickly hidden. As for Yi Chen, he had been sent flying by Herculean Patriarch. He had used up a lot of his 5-element power. His power came from Wuling Patriarch, so he had to constantly replenish it in order to maintain his peak state. However, no one knew that after this attack, Yi Chen's eyes flashed with the light of spiritual wisdom. He glanced at Wuling Patriarch and the light of spiritual wisdom quickly dimmed, becoming no different from before. Enough! Old Man Yin Yang stepped forward to mediate. Old Man Yin Yang ignored Yi Chen and said to Old Man Yin Yang in a low voice, "Old Man Yin Yang, we agreed that we would join forces to fight when we enter. However, this old bastard actually plotted against me. If I didn't have some life-saving abilities, I would have died on the 40th level. This matter definitely won't end so easily." Old Man Yin Yang looked at Old Man Yin Yang and said coldly, "Is this true? So what if it is? So what if it isn't? I've already joined forces to fight. As for the other things, you didn't say anything, and I didn't agree." He had found a loophole. "It seems that you aren't sincere." Granny Night Ghost also stood on Old Man Yin Yang's side. "All right, this is a misunderstanding. We haven't found the abyssal fruit tree yet, but we've already started fighting. Aren't you afraid that all our efforts will go to waste?" Patriarch Golden Light knew that it was time for him to speak. He couldn't let Old Man Yin Yang become the target of everyone. After all, Old Man Yin Yang was the closest to him. "Old Man Golden Light, nothing can be accomplished without rules. I don't trust him." Old Man Yin Yang threatened. "Heh." Patriarch Golden Light laughed, then said in a sinister voice, "Since that's the case, then let's fight. No one can even dream of acquiring the abyssal fruit." He was certain that the other side wouldn't choose to fight. Old Man Yin Yang was enraged. Old Man Yin Yang gave Patriarch Golden Light a deep look. He was silent for a moment, then said slowly, "Let's drop this matter for now. I'll say the ugly words first. In the future, if anyone dares to ignore our agreement, I will kill them, even at the cost of being injured." As he spoke, a sinister, murderous look flashed through his eyes. He had already made up his mind. After acquiring the abyssal fruit, He would join forces with Granny Night Ghost and Old Man Yin Yang to forcefully kill Old Man Yin Yang and Patriarch Golden Light. In any case, prior to coming here, he hadn't planned on splitting the abyssal fruit evenly. To him, the more abyssal fruits he had, the better. Actually, if it wasn't for the fact that the situation was dire, I wouldn't have acted in such a manner. Old Man Yin Yang gave himself a way out of this awkward situation. Of everyone present, the one he feared the most was Old Man Yin Yang. He couldn't see through this old fellow. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.